The first time Detective Owen Carter saw Ava Monroe, she was stepping out of a black Mercedes in front of the Grand Mercer Hotel with a diamond bracelet on her wrist and a look on her face that made every man in the valet line forget what he had been saying. She wore a champagne-colored dress that caught the gold light from the hotel entrance. Not loudly, not desperately, but with the quiet confidence of a woman who knew the room would turn before she reached the door. Her dark hair was pinned loosely at the back of her neck, a few strands touching her cheek whenever the wind moved in from the river. She smiled once at the doorman, placed 2 fingers lightly on his sleeve, and the man opened the glass door as if she owned the building. Across the street, inside an unmarked government sedan, Owen lowered his coffee from his mouth and watched her disappear into the lobby. "Tell me again why we're following her," he said. Beside him, Special Agent Daniel Cross did not look up from the file in his lap. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, disciplined. The kind of man younger agents tried to impress without realizing they were doing it. His suit was dark, his tie plain, his shoes polished enough to reflect the dull orange glow from the dashboard. "Because every time Victor Hale moves money," Cross said, "she appears within 24 hours. Owen glanced back at the hotel entrance. "She looks like Wolf the women Hale keeps around him." Cross closed the file. "That's exactly what she wants everyone to think." Inside the Grand Mercer, the air smelled of expensive flowers, polished wood, and old money, pretending it did not need to impress anyone. A string quartet played near the marble staircase, while waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays and practiced smiles. The benefit gala was officially for coastal restoration after the last hurricane season, but anyone who knew Savannah understood what it really was. A room full of powerful people pretending to care about the water while making deals beside it. Ava Monroe moved through that room like she had been born inside it. Men greeted her with kisses near the cheek. Women looked at her dress before looking at her face. Older donors leaned too close when they spoke. Younger wives looked away too quickly when she passed, and all of them carried the same private judgment in their eyes. They thought they knew her, a beautiful woman with no visible job, a regular guest at private dinners, a name whispered beside rich men in luxury cars. Ava let them think it. She accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and did not drink it. She smiled at a shipping executive from Charleston, laughed softly at a joke that was not funny, and placed her hand on his forearm just long enough for him to feel chosen. Her eyes, meanwhile, moved past his shoulder to the man standing near the balcony doors. Victor Hale. He was 61, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and expensively calm. The owner of Hale Maritime Logistics, a philanthropist in newspaper photographs, a criminal suspect in sealed federal reports. His company owned warehouses, cargo contracts, customs relationships, port access, trucking fleets, and enough political goodwill to survive 3 separate investigations. No charges had ever stuck. Victor was not loud, that made him more dangerous. Loud men needed fear. Victor preferred gratitude. He saw Ava from across the room and gave her the smallest nod. She lifted her glass. Not a toast, a signal. Owen Carter saw it from the hotel's upper security office through a camera feed. He leaned closer to the monitor. "There," he said. "Did you see that?" Cross stood behind him, arms folded. "I saw a woman flirting with a rich man." "That wasn't flirting, then what was it?" Owen hesitated. He was young enough to still believe instincts meant something if he could explain them properly. He replayed the footage in his head. The angle of her wrist. The timing. The way Victor's expression changed for less than a second. "I don't know," Owen said. Cross almost smiled. "Then keep watching." Downstairs, Ava reached Victor near the balcony doors. "Mr. Hale," she said. "Ava." His voice was warm enough for anyone nearby to mistake it for affection. "You missed the museum dinner last week," he said. "People noticed. People notice too much in this city." Victor looked at her over the rim of his glass. "In my experience, people notice the wrong things." Ava smiled. "That must be why you invite them." For the first time that night, Victor's smile became real. Around them, donors laughed and cameras flashed. A local councilman shook hands with a developer near the bar. A federal judge's wife accepted compliments beside a display of silent auction items. Outside the tall windows, the Savannah River moved black and slow beneath the lights. Ava looked relaxed, but under the soft fall of her dress, taped against her ribcage, a thin audio recorder was already running. Victor leaned closer. "Come outside." She followed him through the glass doors onto the balcony. The night air was cooler there, damp with river wind and the smell of salt, diesel, and distant rain. Below, cars slid along Bay Street. Somewhere farther down toward the port, a horn sounded low over the water. Victor stood beside the railing. "You've been asking questions." Ava turned her face toward the river. "Have I?" about the Lawson Pier renovation, about customs staffing, about a vessel called the St. Bridget. She did not answer immediately. In her left hand she held the champagne glass. In her right, hidden by the folds of her dress, her thumb pressed once against the side of her bracelet. A tiny vibration answered against her skin. Recording confirmed. Victor watched her closely. Curiosity is a dangerous habit. So is underestimating women in expensive shoes. He laughed under his breath. You know what people say about you? Ava looked at him then, her smile did not move. I count on it. For a moment the mask slipped between them. Not hers, his. The warmth left Victor's eyes and something older sat behind them. Calculation, wariness, fear maybe. It was gone before anyone else could have noticed. But Ava noticed. She noticed everything. The slight tremor in his right hand when he lifted the glass. The new scratch near the clasp of his watch. The faint red mark on his collar, where someone had grabbed him, or he had pulled too quickly at his tie. The way he avoided looking toward the east side of the river, where 3 of his warehouses sat under floodlights. Victor Hale was not comfortable tonight. That mattered. Inside the security office, Owen watched the silent balcony feed and frowned. Can we get audio? No, said Cross. Why not? Because the warrant doesn't cover the balcony. Owen looked at him. But we're already inside the hotel system. Cross's voice sharpened slightly. Watching is not listening. Owen sat back. He knew better than to push Daniel Cross in front of other agents. Everyone knew Cross had built half the organized crime cases in the Southeast. Everyone knew he had taken down judges, sheriffs, port inspectors, and 2 cartel-linked shell companies before Owen was old enough to vote. Still, something about tonight felt wrong. Not illegal, wrong. On the balcony, Victor moved closer to Ava. You should leave Savannah for a while, he said. That sounds like concern, sir, is it? For me? Victor looked back through the glass at the crowd. For anyone who thinks they understand what's happening. Ava studied him. There it was again. Not a threat. A warning. Before she could answer, the balcony door opened. A woman in a silver gown stepped out, laughing too loudly with a man from the mayor's office. The private moment vanished. Victor's face changed instantly. He became charming again, generous again, untouchable again. Ava lifted her glass and touched it lightly against his. To misunderstanding, she said. Victor's eyes held hers, to survival. He returned to the ballroom first. Ava stayed on the balcony a few seconds longer. Her smile faded. The river wind moved loose strands of hair across her cheek, and for the first time that night, she looked tired. Not glamorous, not careless tired. She reached into her small clutch and touched the edge of a folded photograph hidden beneath lipstick, cash, and a hotel keycard she had no intention of using. A little boy stood in that photograph beside a rusted shrimp boat, holding a paper airplane in one hand. The picture was creased down the middle from being opened too many times. Ava did not take it out. She only touched it once. Then she closed the clutch and walked back inside. By 11:30 the gala had become louder. The string quartet had been replaced by a jazz trio. The older guests had started leaving. The dangerous conversations had moved into corners, elevators, and private rooms, reserved under names that did not appear on official guest lists. Ava crossed the room toward the women's restroom, smiling at no one now. A man in a navy suit followed her, not too close, not far enough. She saw him reflected in a framed painting near the hallway. Mid-30s, military posture, cheap earpiece, expensive watch, not hotel security, Victor's man. Ava kept walking. The hallway narrowed near the restroom entrance. Floral wallpaper. Dim sconces, a small service door at the end with a brass plate reading staff only. She pushed into the restroom, waited 2 seconds, then slipped out through the secondary cleaning closet she had found during the hotel walkthrough 3 weeks earlier. The man in the navy suit entered the restroom corridor and stopped. Empty. Ava was already in the service stairwell, dress lifted slightly in one hand, heels quiet against concrete steps. She descended 2 floors, removed a black service blazer from behind a maintenance pipe, and put it over her dress. From the clutch, she took a hotel staff badge with a different woman's name printed on it. Not fake, borrowed, returned later. Always returned. On the basement level, the air changed. Less perfume, more bleach, steam, laundry detergent, and tired workers trying to finish the night. Ava passed 2 catering employees, arguing softly in Spanish beside a rack of dirty plates. Neither looked at her twice. That was the thing about luxury. The people upstairs believed everyone was watching them. The people downstairs knew nobody was watching them at all. Ava moved through the service corridor until she reached the loading dock entrance. Outside, a white catering van idled near the curb. Beyond it, under the weak yellow light of the alley, a black SUV waited with its engine off. A man stood beside it, Victor Hale's head of security, Marcus Red. He was not supposed to be there. Ava stopped before he saw her and stepped back into the shadow beside a stack of folded linens. Marcus checked his phone, looked toward the loading dock, then walked to the rear of the SUV. He opened the hatch and removed a small gray case, the kind used for camera equipment or medical instruments. He placed it inside the catering van. The driver did not get out. Marcus tapped twice on the van's rear door. The van pulled away. Ava watched the Saints plate disappear around the corner. Then she looked down at her bracelet. The tiny recorder was still running. Upstairs, Owen Carter's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No words, just license plate. He stared at it. "Agent Cross," he said. Cross turned from the monitor. "What?" Owen held up the phone. "I think someone just sent me a lead." Cross took the phone from him. For a fraction of a second his expression changed. It was too quick for most people. Owen caught it anyway. Cross handed the phone back. "Delete it." Owen blinked. "Why?" "Because anonymous tips compromise chain of custody. But the plate could be connected to Hale. If it matters, it will come through proper channels." Owen looked at the screen again. The message sat there simple and sharp. A small anomaly, a loose thread. The kind detectives were trained not to ignore. Down in the alley, Ava removed the staff blazer and stepped back into the night as if she'd only come outside for air. Her driver opened the Mercedes door. She slipped into the back seat, waited until the hotel lights were behind her, then finally exhaled. The car turned toward the river road. Ava reached beneath the seat and pulled out a slim black phone. Not the one Shetty used at parties. Not the one in her clutch. This one had no social media, no photographs, no contacts under real names. She typed one message: "Package moved from Mercer loading dock." Marcus read present. "Plate sent to Carter. Cross reaction unknown." She paused before sending the final sentence. Then she added, "I think the leak is closer than we thought." The phone vibrated with a reply almost instantly. "Do not trust anyone." Ava stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Outside, Savannah passed in warm windows, wet pavement, iron balconies, and quiet streets where tourists slept without knowing what moved beneath the city after midnight. She leaned her head back against the leather seat and closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Then the driver spoke. "Home, Miss Monroe?" Ava opened her eyes. "No." "Where to?" She looked out toward the distant cranes at the port, their red lights blinking slowly against the dark. "The east warehouses." The driver hesitated. "At this hour?" Ava slid the black phone back beneath the seat. "Especially at this hour." Behind them, unseen in the hotel security office, Daniel Cross stood alone by the monitors after everyone else had stepped out for coffee. He replayed the balcony footage once, then again. His face remained calm. On the screen, Ava smiled at Victor Hale. Cross reached into his pocket, took out his own phone and made a call. "She's moving," he said. He listened for a moment. "No, don't stop her yet." His eyes stayed on Ava's image. "Let her lead us to whoever she still trusts." By the time Ava Monroe reached the Eastern Industrial District, most of Savannah had gone quiet. Downtown restaurants were stacking chairs. Tourists were drifting back to hotels. The riverboats had dimmed their lights. Even the traffic seemed tired. But the port never slept. Containers moved through darkness beneath towering cranes. Diesel engines growled somewhere beyond the fence lines. Sodium floodlights painted everything in shades of amber and shadow. The entire waterfront felt like a machine too large to shut down. Ava parked 3 blocks away. Not because she was afraid of being seen. Because she assumed she already had been. She stepped from the Mercedes and exchanged the heels for flat shoes hidden inside a canvas tote. The dress disappeared beneath a dark jacket. Her hair went up into a loose knot. 10 seconds later she looked like someone finishing a late shift, instead of a woman who had spent the evening among millionaires. The transformation had become second nature years ago. Nobody notices ordinary people. That was one of the first lessons Daniel Cross had taught her. The memory arrived unexpectedly. A training range in Virginia. Rain, cold coffee in paper cups. Cross standing beside a target board. People don't hide because they're smart, he had told a room full of recruits. They hide because everyone else is lazy. Ava remembered believing him completely. Back then. Before secrets started appearing inside investigations. Before witnesses vanished. Before evidence somehow reached suspects hours before arrests. Before she learned that trust and truth were rarely the same thing. She crossed the empty street and stopped beside a chain-link fence. Warehouse 18 stood 200 yards away. Officially it stored imported machinery. Officially nothing suspicious had ever been found there. Officially it was clean. That was the problem. Too clean. For 3 years federal auditors, customs investigators, port inspectors and task force agents had searched for something that connected Victor Hale to organized smuggling. Nothing. Not once. No drugs, no weapons, no missing manifests. No illegal cargo. No accounting discrepancies. Nothing. Victor's operation was either legitimate or operated by someone far smarter than the people chasing it. Ava believed the second explanation. A security truck rolled slowly past the building. She waited, counted. 31 seconds. The vehicle disappeared around the opposite corner. She moved. Not toward the warehouse, toward the drainage canal behind it. Most criminals protected doors. Most investigators watched gates. Nobody paid attention to infrastructure maps. 5 months earlier, Ava had discovered a maintenance tunnel connecting 3 adjacent properties beneath the district. It wasn't secret. It appeared on old municipal blueprints. Which was exactly why nobody thought to use it. The steel access hatch sat half-hidden beneath weeds. Locked. Yesterday it had been unlocked. Ava crouched beside it, her pulse slowed. Someone had changed the lock, that mattered. She examined the metal without touching it. Fresh scratches, recent installation. Less than 48 hours, something had changed, and somebody wanted privacy. A distant engine echoed somewhere beyond the warehouses. Ava stepped back into darkness and watched. 3 minutes passed, then 5, then 7. Patience separated investigators from tourists. Eventually headlights appeared, not one vehicle. 3, a black SUV, a white utility van. Another SUV. The convoy entered Warehouse 18 through a side-loading entrance normally closed after midnight. Ava frowned. Interesting, very interesting. The gray case Marcus Red had transferred earlier tonight could not have contained much. Too small, which meant it was valuable, or sensitive, or both. The vehicles disappeared inside, the door shut, silence returned. Ava checked her watch, 12:41 a.m., then she saw something else. Not at the warehouse, across the street. A man sitting inside a pickup truck. Watching, just watching, no security uniform. No company logo, no visible purpose. The truck had been parked there when she arrived. Now she realized the engine was still running. The driver wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at Warehouse 18, the same building she was watching. Interesting. A second observer. The question was whose? FBI, private investigator, Victor's competitor, customs journalist, criminal? The possibilities multiplied instantly. The man remained motionless, so did Ava. A game of patience began. Neither moved for almost 10 minutes. Then the pickup truck headlights flashed twice. Nothing happened. 30 seconds later they flashed twice again. Ava felt tension crawl up her spine. A signal. Definitely a signal. But to whom? Inside the warehouse? Someone nearby? The answer arrived sooner than expected. The rear loading door opened, only halfway. Just enough. A silhouette appeared briefly inside the light, then vanished. The door closed again. Message received. Ava's stomach tightened. This wasn't random. This was coordination. Someone inside Warehouse 18 expected contact. The pickup truck remained parked another minute before finally pulling away. Ava memorized the plate number, then the make. Then a dent above the rear wheel well. Habit. Details mattered. Details survived when memories failed. Her phone vibrated, one short pulse. Not a call, not a text, encrypted notification. She opened it. Unknown source detected. Her jaw tightened. Someone had attempted to access one of her secure communication channels. Failed. But attempted. That almost never happened. Only highly trained people even knew the channel existed. Ava stared at the screen. Someone was looking for her, or monitoring her, or both. The timing was too perfect to ignore. She closed the notification and started walking away. Sometimes the smartest move was not pushing farther. Information had value only if you survived long enough to use it. The night air felt heavier as she returned toward her vehicle. Halfway there she stopped. A reflection, tiny, momentary. Inside a storefront window. Someone behind her. 1 block back slowly, not trying to catch up, not trying to hide. Professional, a tail. Ava continued without changing pace. Never acknowledge surveillance immediately. That was another lesson from Daniel Cross. Strange how many useful lessons came from dangerous teachers. She crossed an intersection, the figure followed. Not closer, not farther. Steady, disciplined, experienced. She turned onto River Industrial Road. The follower adjusted. Still there, definitely there. Ava's pulse remained calm. Panic narrowed thinking. Calm expanded options. The old freight district offered many. 3 corners later she entered a 24-hour convenience store. The follower passed without entering. Too professional to trap himself. Too cautious to expose himself. Ava bought bottled water she didn't need, and watched through the front window. 3 minutes later the same figure appeared again. Now moving in the opposite direction. Trying to confirm whether she remained inside. Male, medium build, dark jacket, baseball cap. Face hidden. Interesting, very interesting. Not local security, not Marcus Red, not anyone she recognized. Which meant the possibilities were narrowing. Ava left through the rear exit. Cut through an alley. Crossed behind 2 buildings. Entered her vehicle from the passenger side. The Mercedes pulled away without headlights for 50 yards, before merging onto the main road. Only then did she allow herself a breath. Whoever the man was, she had lost him. Probably, maybe. Nothing was certain anymore. Especially not tonight. 20 minutes later she reached her apartment overlooking a quiet section of the river. The building wasn't luxurious. That was intentional. The furniture inside wasn't luxurious either. Also intentional. People expected Ava Monroe to live inside penthouses. They expected designer closets, private elevators, champagne collections. What they found instead would disappoint them. A small kitchen, a worn couch, a bookshelf, a desk, a refrigerator covered with notes and photographs. The apartment belonged to someone obsessed with details, not status. Ava locked the door behind her and immediately checked 3 tiny indicators hidden around the apartment. One near the window, one beneath a shelf, one beside the bedroom doorway, all untouched. Good, no entry. She finally removed the bracelet recorder. Connected to her laptop, downloaded the evening audio. 3 hours. 47 minutes. Thousands of conversations, most useless, some valuable, one potentially explosive. She located Victor's balcony conversation and replayed it. You should leave Savannah for a while. His voice filled the room. That sounds like concern. It is, for me. For anyone who thinks they understand what's happening. Ava listened twice. Then 3 times. Not a threat. Still not a threat. A warning. Victor Hale had wanted her alive. Why? That question bothered her more than any evidence. Criminals protected themselves. They didn't protect investigators. Unless something frightened them more than the investigation itself. A knock interrupted her thoughts. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Ava froze. Nobody knew this address. Nobody. She approached silently, looked through the peephole. Her heartbeat stumbled, not from fear, from surprise. Detective Owen Carter stood outside her apartment, holding a folded piece of paper. Alone, no backup, no warrant, no obvious explanation. Just standing there beneath the hallway light. Waiting. Ava didn't move. Neither did he. 30 seconds passed. Then Owen spoke through the closed door. Quiet, carefully. I know you sent the license plate. Ava remained silent. His voice came again. And I think somebody inside my task force wants me to ignore it. Still silence. Owen looked down the empty hallway before speaking one final sentence. The sentence that changed everything. I don't know who to trust anymore. Then he unfolded the paper and slid it beneath her door. Ava waited until his footsteps disappeared. Only then did she retrieve it. Inside was a printed vehicle registration report. The pickup truck she had seen outside Warehouse 18. Owner, Estates Federal Bureau of Investigation. Assigned Division. Southeast Organized Crime Task Force. Assigned Supervising Agent Daniel Cross. Ava stared at the name. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller, much quieter, much colder. Outside, somewhere beyond the river, a ship horn echoed through the darkness. Long, low, uneasy. And for the first time in years, Ava Monroe began to wonder whether she had ever truly known the man who taught her everything. Ava Monroe did not sleep. The vehicle registration report remained on her kitchen table, beneath the glow of a single lamp. Outside the apartment window, the river moved silently through darkness, carrying reflections of distant harbor lights toward the Atlantic. Most people would have focused on the name, Daniel Cross, the respected federal agent, the decorated investigator, the mentor, the man who had trained generations of agents. Ava focused on something else. Timing. Timing was harder to fake. The pickup truck had been watching Warehouse 18. The same night Marcus Red transferred the gray case. The same night someone attempted to access her encrypted communications. The same night Victor Hale warned her to leave Savannah. 1 coincidence was ordinary, 2 was suspicious, 3 was a pattern, 4 was a message. Someone knew the investigation was moving. Someone was repositioning pieces on the board. The question was whether Daniel Cross was the hunter, or merely another target. At 4:17 in the morning, Ava finally opened her laptop again. She connected through 3 separate encrypted relays before accessing a private evidence archive. Years of notes appeared, names, photographs, shipping manifests, financial records, witness statements. Every fragment she had quietly collected during 4 years undercover. She typed one search term, Cross. 37 results appeared, nothing explosive, nothing criminal, nothing direct, but several entries caught her attention. 3 operations that failed unexpectedly. 2 confidential witnesses who vanished before testimony. 1 customs officer who withdrew cooperation hours before signing a statement. Each case involved Daniel Cross somewhere in the chain of command. That alone proved nothing. Cross supervised hundreds of investigations. Statistics could create ghosts where none existed. Still, the pattern bothered her. Ava leaned back in her chair and rubbed her eyes. The little boy's photograph sat beside the laptop. The edges were worn now, the image slightly faded. For years she carried it everywhere, a reminder, a promise, a reason. The boy had disappeared 7 years earlier during a smuggling operation gone wrong along the Georgia coast. Official reports blamed local traffickers. 2 suspects were arrested. The case closed quickly. Too quickly. Ava never believed the official story. Neither had the boy's mother. That investigation had eventually led Ava toward Victor Hale. Then beyond Victor Hale. Toward something larger. Something hidden. And now perhaps toward Daniel Cross himself. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Not the coded knock Owen had used earlier. This one was louder, official, confident. Ava stood immediately. Her pulse accelerated. Another knock followed, then a voice. Federal agents, open the door. Every muscle in her body tightened. Too soon, far too soon. Nobody should have known she met Owen. Nobody should have known about the report. Nobody. Ava approached carefully and checked the hallway camera feed from her phone. 3 agents, tactical jackets, FBI credentials. Real, not imposters. One of them she recognized. Agent Melissa Grant. Internal Affairs. This was bad. Very bad. Internal Affairs never visited at dawn to exchange pleasantries. The knock came again. Ava opened the door. Melissa Grant's expression remained professional. Almost sympathetic. Almost. We need you to come with us. Why? You know why? I'd rather hear it. Melissa exchanged a glance with another agent. Then handed Ava a document. The accusations sat near the center of the page. Unauthorized disclosure of operational intelligence. For a moment the words felt surreal. Almost absurd. Then understanding arrived. Someone had moved first. The leak investigation. Warehouse 18. The failed operations. The anonymous tip. Everything was converging. And somehow the spotlight now pointed directly at her. The drive downtown lasted 22 minutes. Nobody spoke. The city was only beginning to wake. Coffee shops opening. Street sweepers working. Commuters filling intersections. Normal life continuing completely unaware of the wars fought beneath it. Ava watched Savannah pass beyond the window. Trying to think. Trying to understand. Trying to identify the mistakes she had made. She found none. That worried her more than if she had. Because innocent people usually knew exactly where they had failed. Professionals understood something worse. Sometimes failure belonged to somebody else. The federal building felt colder than usual. Melissa escorted Ava through multiple security checkpoints before entering a conference room. No windows, gray walls, cheap coffee, government furniture. The room smelled faintly of printer toner and old carpet. Someone had already prepared a file folder on the table. Ava sat, waited. 5 minutes later the door opened. Daniel Cross entered, alone. His expression revealed nothing. Not anger, not disappointment, nothing. Which somehow made it worse. He sat opposite her, studied her quietly. The silence stretched. Finally Ava spoke. What am I accused of? Cross slid a photograph across the table. The image showed Warehouse 18. Taken last night. Another followed. The service corridor beneath the Grand Mercer Hotel. Then another. The alley behind the loading dock. Then another. Ava entering her apartment building. Photograph after photograph. Surveillance. Extensive surveillance. Professional surveillance. Her stomach tightened. Not because she had been followed. Because of how long it had apparently been happening. Cross watched her reaction. Anything you'd like to explain? Ava looked up. When did this start? Answer my question. When did the surveillance start? Cross remained silent. The answer itself, months. Maybe longer. Ava suddenly felt very tired. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that arrived when pieces finally clicked together. Someone had been building a case, slowly, carefully, patiently, long before Warehouse 18. Long before Owen's message. Long before tonight. Cross opened the folder. We have evidence that operational details were disclosed to unauthorized entities. Evidence or assumptions? We have both. Show me. He produced another photograph. This time her pulse genuinely jumped. Owen Carter. Standing outside her apartment. Hours earlier. Captured from somewhere across the street. Cross leaned back. You care to explain why Detective Carter visited you after midnight? Ava stared at the image. Someone had photographed Owen. Which meant someone had watched her building. The entire night, possibly longer. The realization hit harder than the accusation itself. Because it exposed resources, planning, intent. This wasn't damage control, this was preparation. Cross watched her carefully. You look surprised. I am. By what? Ava held his gaze. By how much effort somebody invested into this. Something flickered behind his eyes. Briefly, gone before most people would notice. Not guilt, not fear, recognition. He understood exactly what she meant. The interview continued another hour. Questions, and documents, timelines, nothing concrete, nothing decisive, enough smoke to imply fire, not enough to prove it, which made the situation more dangerous. Weak evidence could be challenged. Ambiguous evidence could be weaponized. At noon, Ava was suspended pending investigation. Badge surrendered. Access revoked. Operational authority terminated. Officially, she remained employed. Unofficially, she had become radioactive. Nobody wanted proximity. Nobody wanted risk. By evening, the news had quietly spread through the task force. Phones stopped ringing. Messages went unanswered. Conversations ended when she entered rooms. Trust evaporated astonishingly fast. Years of service reduced to whispers within hours. Human nature rarely changed. People trusted reputations until authority suggested otherwise. Then they trusted authority. Ava left the building carrying a cardboard box. Inside sat ordinary fragments of life: a notebook, pens, a coffee mug, several case files, nothing dramatic. The contents of a career compressed into a small container. Rain had started falling, light rain, persistent rain, the kind that soaked clothing slowly. A black sedan waited across the street, engine running, windows tinted. Ava almost ignored it. Then the driver's window lowered. Owen Carter sat behind the wheel. His expression looked terrible. He opened the passenger door. "We need to talk." Ava entered without speaking. The sedan pulled away. Traffic hissed through wet streets around them. For several blocks neither spoke. Finally Owen handed her a flash drive. Small, silver, unremarkable. Ava frowned. "What is this?" Owen gripped the steering wheel tighter. "The reason they're coming after you." The words hung in the air. Heavy, uncomfortable, dangerous. Ava looked at him. "Explain." "I found something." "What?" Owen shook his head. "Not here." Rain struck the windshield harder now. The wipers swept back and forth, steady, relentless, like a countdown. Owen turned onto a deserted road near the river. Only then did he continue. "After you sent that license plate. I never admitted sending it. You didn't need to." He swallowed, looked ahead. "I checked records nobody told me to check." Ava remained silent. Owen continued. "The pickup truck wasn't assigned to Daniel Cross." A pause. "It was assigned under his name." Ava felt cold. A subtle distinction, but a critical one. "Meaning?" Owen's voice dropped. "Meaning somebody wanted investigators to believe Cross owned that vehicle." The implications spread instantly, like cracks through glass. The registration report, the surveillance, the accusations, the leak investigation. Every piece suddenly looked different. Not random. Directed. Engineered. Someone wasn't merely framing Ava. Someone might be framing Daniel Cross too. Or using him. Or hiding behind him. The possibilities multiplied again. Too many possibilities, too few answers. Owen pulled beneath an abandoned warehouse canopy overlooking the river. Rain drummed against the roof above them. No other vehicles nearby, no witnesses, no distractions. He finally turned toward her. "Ava, what?" His face had gone pale. "I think we're investigating the wrong people." Silence. Rain, dark water beyond the docks. Then Owen spoke the sentence neither of them expected. "The leak isn't inside Victor Hale's organization." He swallowed. "It's inside ours." Ava looked down at the flash drive resting in her palm. Small, ordinary, potentially explosive. And for the first time since the investigation began, she realized a possibility far more frightening than corruption. What if nobody actually knew who controlled the game anymore? Because somewhere inside the federal system, someone had spent years manipulating investigations, redirecting suspicion, protecting secrets, and turning investigators against each other. And they were good enough that even now nobody could see their face. Not Ava, not Owen, maybe not even Daniel Cross. The flash drive suddenly felt much heavier than its weight. And neither of them noticed the distant vehicle parked on a ridge above the river, its engine off, its lights dark, watching, waiting, recording everything. For several seconds neither Ava Monroe nor Owen Carter moved. Rain hammered the warehouse roof above them. Water streamed down rusted support beams and disappeared into puddles gathering along cracked concrete. Beyond the open side of the structure, the Savannah River rolled through darkness, black and endless beneath distant industrial lights. The flash drive rested in Ava's palm, small, unremarkable, potentially capable of destroying careers, or ending lives. Owen finally spoke. "I copied it before anyone could log access records." Ava looked up. "Where did it come from?" His answer came immediately. "I don't know, that's not good enough." "I know." She studied him. The exhaustion on his face appeared genuine. The uncertainty looked genuine too. That was the problem with deception. The best liars often believed their own stories. But Owen did not feel like a liar. He felt overwhelmed, a dangerous difference. "You risked your career for this?" Owen laughed once, not because anything was funny. "Pretty sure that's already happening." The rain intensified. For a moment neither spoke. Then Ava removed a compact laptop from her bag and connected the flash drive. The screen illuminated the dark interior of the vehicle. Several folders appeared. No names. Only dates. Years 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Thousands of files. Ava's heartbeat slowed. The way it always did before something important. Her mind became quieter, sharper, more focused. She opened the first folder. Financial records, shipping manifests, wire transfers, port access logs, nothing unusual. Then she noticed something. Every document appeared legitimate. Too legitimate. The formatting matched perfectly. The signatures aligned correctly. The accounting was flawless. No mistakes, no inconsistencies, no human imperfections. Ava frowned. Real records usually contained errors. Typos, corrections, formatting differences. People made mistakes. Perfect systems were suspicious. She opened another file. Then another. Then another. The pattern repeated. Everything looked authentic. Almost professionally authentic. Like somebody had manufactured an alternate reality. Owen watched her. What is it? This isn't evidence. What? It's a performance. He stared. Ava clicked through additional documents. Somebody wants investigators to find this. The realization settled heavily between them, because planted evidence served one purpose. Redirection. Not truth. Ava closed the folder, opened another, then froze. This one was different. Not accounting, not shipping, video. A single file. Timestamped 8 months earlier. No description, no label, only a string of numbers. Ava clicked. Static appeared, then an image, security footage, poor quality. Nighttime, a warehouse interior. Several men standing near shipping containers. One of them instantly caught Ava's attention. Marcus read. Victor Hale's head of security. Another man stepped into frame. The video quality blurred his face. But not enough. Owen leaned closer. Ava remained silent. The second man was Daniel Cross. The footage lasted only 42 seconds. No audio, no explanation, no context. Cross exchanged something with Marcus. A small package. Then both men exited frame. Video ended. Silence filled the vehicle. Owen stared at the blank screen. Ava stared longer. Most investigators would see confirmation, proof, vindication. Ava saw something else. Convenience. The footage answered too many questions. Too neatly, too perfectly. That alone made her distrust it. Thoughts? Owen asked. Fake, he blinked. What? Maybe not the video itself. Then what? The story? Owen looked confused. Ava understood why. Most people believed evidence told stories. Experienced investigators knew the opposite. People used evidence to create stories. Sometimes true. Sometimes not. Look at what we're supposed to conclude. She pointed toward the frozen frame. Cross meets Mark's art. Marcus works for Victor Hale. Right. Therefore Cross works with Hale. Owen nodded slowly. Seems reasonable. Exactly. Too reasonable. The rain softened outside. Not stopping. Merely changing rhythm. Ava leaned back. Thinking. Patterns. Motives. Possibilities. Pieces floating without connections. Then suddenly one detail surfaced from memory. The gray case. Marcus transferring it the Grand Mercer. Warehouse 18. The pickup truck. The registration records. The surveillance. Every thread seemed designed to pull investigators toward Daniel Cross. Not away from him. Toward him. That mattered. Because guilty people usually hid. And that made Ava nervous. Very nervous. Her phone vibrated. Once. Then again. Encrypted channel. Unknown sender. Owen immediately noticed. You getting messages? Ava ignored him. Opened the alert. One sentence appeared. You opened the drive, nothing else. No signature, no explanation, no identifier. Ava felt ice settle in her stomach. The timing was impossible. Only 2 people knew the drive existed, herself and Owen. Neither had discussed it electronically. Yet someone knew immediately. Owen read her expression. What happened? Ava handed him the phone. His face drained of color. For the first time that night, genuine fear appeared. Not concern, not confusion, fear. Someone was watching much closer than either of them realized. Ava closed the message, deleted it, disconnected the laptop. The situation had changed, rapidly, dangerously. We need to move. Owen nodded instantly. No argument, no hesitation. Good, he understood. 10 minutes later they were driving west through industrial streets. No destination, just movement. Movement complicated surveillance. The city remained wet and mostly empty. Gas stations glowed beneath fluorescent lights. Freight trains crossed distant intersections. Neon signs reflected across rain-slick pavement. Ordinary life continuing around extraordinary secrets. Ava watched mirrors continuously. One vehicle, silver sedan. 2 blocks back. Maintaining distance, consistent position. Too consistent. There. Owen checked. The sedan remained visible. Then disappeared behind a traffic light, then reappeared. Still there. Neither spoke, neither needed to. Owen accelerated slightly. The sedan matched, not aggressively. Another turn, same result. Ava exhaled slowly. Confirmed. Surveillance again. Different vehicle this time. Or maybe not. Hard to tell. Harder to prove. The sedan followed for another 15 minutes before abruptly turning away. Gone, vanished, as if it had accomplished its purpose. Owen gripped the wheel. What now? Ava looked through rain-covered glass toward the distant port cranes. We find whoever gave you the drive. I told you, I don't know who. Somebody left it. I found it in evidence storage. Ava turned toward him. Evidence storage where? Owen hesitated. Too long. Then answered, storage room C. Who has access? Lots of people. Name them. His, not because he didn't know. Because he did. And suddenly realized how bad the answer might be. Nearly 40 people possessed access credentials. Analysts, agents, supervisors, technicians. Managers, administrative personnel. Too many suspects. Too many opportunities. Exactly how a sophisticated operator preferred it. Ava stared out the window, thinking. Always thinking. Then another memory surfaced. Unexpected. Victor Hale on the balcony. You should leave, Savannah. Not a threat, a warning. At the time she couldn't understand why. Now she wondered something different. Maybe Victor Hale wasn't protecting himself. Maybe he was protecting her. The possibility sounded absurd, which made it difficult to dismiss. Her phone vibrated again, another encrypted message. Different sender, recognized sender. A source she had trusted for nearly 2 years. The message contained only an address, nothing more, no explanation, no request, just coordinates. Owen glanced over. Who is it? A source. Reliable? Ava considered, then answered honestly. Usually, that wasn't reassurance, both knew it. 30 minutes later they arrived at an abandoned marina north of the city. The rain had nearly stopped. Fog drifted above dark water. Old docks creaked softly beneath the wind. The place felt forgotten, which was probably why someone chose it. Ava exited first, Owen followed. Neither carried visible weapons. Not because they lacked them. Because some meetings required trust. Or at least the appearance of it. Halfway down the pier they found a small metal lockbox attached beneath a weathered bench. Freshly placed. Waiting, Ava opened it. Inside sat a single object, no money, no documents, no flash drives. Just a cheap disposable phone. Powered on, waiting, the screen suddenly illuminated incoming call. Neither moved. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally Ava answered. Silence. Then breathing. An older man. Nervous, terrified. When he finally spoke his voice trembled. You don't have much time. Ava's pulse quickened. Who is this? You need to stop looking at Victor Hale. The words hung in darkness. Owen stepped closer. Listening, the voice continued. Victor isn't the top. Ava exchanged a glance with Owen. The old man inhaled sharply, as if afraid somebody might hear him. Then he whispered the sentence that changed everything. The people you're hunting. A pause, a crack in his voice. They're the same people investigating them. Static exploded through the line, the call disconnected. Dead gone. Silence returned to the marina, only water, fog wind, and the disposable phone resting in Ava's hand. A second later the screen flashed one final time. A photograph appeared, old, grainy, taken years earlier. 5 people standing together outside a federal training facility. Young agents, smiling, celebrating graduation. One was Daniel Cross, another was a younger version of Ava. The remaining 3 faces made her blood run cold, because every single one of them now occupied powerful positions inside federal law enforcement. And 2 of them officially oversaw the investigation into Victor Hale. Ava stared at the image, then at Owen. Neither spoke, neither needed to. For the first time, the possibility became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a corrupt official, or a corrupt department, or even a corrupt investigation. It might be an entire network. And if that was true, then Victor Hale had never been the center of the story. He had only been the bait. For nearly a minute, neither Ava Monroe nor Owen Carter spoke. The photograph remained illuminated on the disposable phone. 5 smiling faces. 5 federal agents at the beginning of their careers. 5 people standing beneath a banner celebrating the completion of an elite investigative program. At first glance it looked ordinary. A graduation photograph. A memory. A piece of forgotten history. But context transformed ordinary things into dangerous things. 3 people in that photograph now occupied senior positions inside federal law enforcement. One supervised organized crime investigations across multiple states. Another controlled access to sensitive intelligence databases. The third oversaw internal compliance reviews. Together they touched almost every major investigation moving through the region. And all 3 shared the same origin. The same mentor. The same circle, Daniel Cross. Ava zoomed in, not because she doubted what she saw, because she needed to think, needed to separate evidence from emotion. Daniel Cross had trained her, protected her career, recommended her for undercover assignments nobody else would have received, helped her survive situations that should have ended differently. None of that automatically made him innocent. But neither did suspicion automatically make him guilty. That distinction mattered, more now than ever. The disposable phone suddenly vibrated. A new message appeared. One sentence. Check the date. Then the screen went black forever. Battery dead, or remotely disabled. Either way, the message remained. Check the date. Owen frowned. What does that mean? Ava stared at the photograph again, then noticed something. Not the faces, not the background, the date stamp. 8 years earlier. Her heartbeat slowed, then slowed further. The way it always did when pieces finally started connecting. Because 8 years earlier created a problem. A serious problem. The little boy from her photograph disappeared 7 years earlier. The operation that supposedly connected Victor Hale to smuggling activities began 6 years earlier. Most of the suspicious investigations started 5 years earlier. The timeline didn't fit. Not neatly, not comfortably. If the network existed, it existed before Victor Hale entered the picture. Much earlier, which suggested something important. Victor Hale wasn't the cause. He was a consequence. Someone larger had already been operating long before his name appeared. The realization changed the direction of the entire investigation. Again. Owen sat beside her on the damp marina bench. You thinking what I'm thinking? No, he fair. Ava stood. We need information. From who? She looked toward the dark water. Victor Hale. For several seconds Owen simply stared, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded insane. The guy we've spent years trying to arrest? The same one. You think he'll help? I think he's scared. The words settled heavily between them. Because powerful men rarely looked afraid. Victor Hale had. Ava remembered the balcony, the warning, the fatigue behind his eyes, the tremor in his hand. At the time she interpreted them as stress. Now she wasn't so certain. Perhaps Victor wasn't protecting an empire. Perhaps he was surviving inside one. The next afternoon Ava sat alone at a small cafe near Forsyth Park. Rain clouds lingered overhead. The lunch crowd moved slowly beneath the oak trees draped with Spanish moss. Tourists photographed fountains. Students crossed sidewalks carrying backpacks. The city looked peaceful, normal, completely disconnected from the storm gathering beneath it. Ava sipped cold coffee she had forgotten to drink, an old habit. Thinking always interrupted routine. The folded photograph of the little boy rested inside her notebook. Beside it sat a handwritten list, names, dates, operations, connections. The web kept growing, and every thread seemed to lead somewhere unexpected. Her burner phone vibrated. Unknown number, she answered. No greeting, no introduction, only Victor Hale's voice. You should stop calling people. Ava didn't react. You sound concerned. You mistake concern for practicality. She glanced across the park. Families. Dogs, nobody paying attention. Good. Let's skip the games, Victor. Silence, then a sigh, an older man sigh, tired, resigned. Human, not the response she expected. What do you want? He asked. The truth. Victor laughed softly. Everybody says that. I'm serious, so am I. The line remained quiet for several seconds. Then Victor spoke again. Meet me. Ava expected resistance, negotiation, conditions. Instead she received an address. Nothing more. The call ended. That alone worried her. Because desperate people negotiated. Men with no options simply accepted consequences. 3 hours later Ava stood inside a neglected ship repair yard along the river. The facility had closed years earlier. Rust covered most visible surfaces. Broken cranes loomed above abandoned dry docks. Wind pushed through shattered warehouse windows. Everything smelled faintly of salt and old machinery. Victor Hale waited alone beside an empty maintenance building. No visible security, no bodyguards, no armored vehicles. Just a 61-year-old man wearing a dark jacket and carrying more exhaustion than power. Ava approached carefully. Victor watched the river. Not her. The last time I stood here, he said, this yard employed 600 people. Ava remained silent. Now look at it. He gestured toward rusting structures. Broken infrastructure, forgotten equipment. A monument to decline. The world changes. Victor nodded. That's what people say when they don't know why something happened. For the first time he turned toward her. The confidence still existed. But something else existed too. Weariness. Deep weariness. The kind that accumulated over years. Not days. You've been looking in the wrong direction. Ava crossed her arms. Then point me in the right one. Victor smiled faintly. No, the answer surprised her. Why not? Because then you'd become predictable. Wind rattled loose sheet metal somewhere above them. Neither spoke. Finally Victor reached into his jacket and removed a small envelope. Plain, unmarked, ordinary. He handed it to her. Ava did not immediately take it. What's inside? A chance. To do what? Victor's eyes settled on hers. Ask better questions. She accepted the envelope, light, thin. Only a few papers. Nothing of bulk, nothing of You could simply tell me. Victor looked back toward the river. No. Again that answer. Again frustratingly simple. Ava studied him. Then asked the question that mattered most. Are you the man running this network? Victor actually smiled. Not mockingly, not arrogantly, almost sadly, Miss Monroe. The wind carried his words away for a moment. Then he continued, if I were that powerful. His gaze drifted toward the distant city skyline. Do you think I'd still be here? The question lingered, uncomfortable. Because it sounded genuine, Ava opened the envelope. 3 pages. Nothing more. The first contained names. The second contained dates. The third contained a photograph. The moment she saw it, her stomach tightened. The photograph showed a private fundraising event from nearly 10 years earlier. Several political donors, corporate executives, community leaders, and one federal agent, Daniel Cross, standing beside a man Ava had never seen before. No criminal record, no public profile, no government position, just a face. Yet somebody considered that face important enough to preserve for a decade. Victor watched her reaction. You don't recognize him. It wasn't a question. Ava shook her head. Should I? Victor's answer came quietly. Everybody should. The conversation ended shortly afterward. Not because Ava lacked questions. Because Victor refused to answer most of them. The meeting felt less like an interrogation and more like a warning delivered by someone who no longer cared about protecting himself. That bothered her. Deeply. As she drove away from the shipyard, Owen called. His voice sounded urgent. Ava, what happened? I got into storage room C. Her grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. And silence. Then, the flash drive wasn't stored there. A pause. Another. It was logged there. Ava felt her pulse quicken. Difference. Critical difference. Explain. The evidence database shows it entered storage. Okay, but surveillance footage shows nobody ever placed it there. The world suddenly felt smaller, sharper, more dangerous. A phantom piece of evidence. A documented item that physically never existed. Someone had manipulated official records. Not sloppily, professionally, systematically. Years of experience suddenly whispered the same conclusion. This wasn't corruption happening inside the investigation. This was corruption controlling the investigation. Ava. Owen's voice sounded different now. Uneasy. What? We have another problem. She already knew she wouldn't like the answer. What problem? The silence lasted almost 3 seconds. Then Owen spoke. Daniel Cross just requested every file connected to your undercover operation. The city skyline appeared ahead through the windshield. Golden lights. Evening traffic. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, completely unaware. Ava looked at the envelope resting on the passenger seat. At the unknown face in the photograph. At the names. The dates, the unanswered questions. Then her phone vibrated. A text message. Unknown. Send 4 words. He knows about Victor. Ava read it twice, then 3 times. The message wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. Because for the first time since this began, she understood something terrifying. Someone inside the network wasn't trying to stop her anymore. Someone was helping her. And whoever that person was, they were close enough to know exactly what Daniel Cross was doing. Ava Monroe did not answer the anonymous message immediately. She simply stared at the screen while evening traffic flowed around her. He knows about Victor. 4 words, nothing more. No signature, no explanation, no demand. Yet somehow those 4 words felt heavier than entire case files. Because they implied proximity, not speculation, knowledge. Someone close enough to Daniel Cross to observe him. Someone embedded deep enough inside the system to monitor sensitive activity. Someone risking everything. Or manipulating everything. The distinction was becoming increasingly difficult to identify. Ava folded the envelope from Victor Hale and placed it back into her bag. Then she called Owen. He answered immediately. Tell me you found something. Where are you? A pause. Then, not on a government line. Good. Another pause. I think we're past the point where that's reassuring. For the first time in days, Ava almost smiled. Almost. Meet me at the old archive building. The county records place? 30 minutes. The line disconnected. Outside the windshield, Savannah glowed beneath the fading orange light of sunset. Beautiful cities often hid ugly truths. Savannah was proving no exception. 35 minutes later, Ava entered the abandoned municipal archive building. The structure had once stored decades of property records, zoning maps, engineering plans, and legal documents before digitization rendered most of it obsolete. Dust coated nearly every visible surface. Old filing cabinets lined dark hallways. The air smelled of paper, mildew, and forgotten history. Perfect. Nobody came here anymore, which meant conversations survived longer. Owen arrived minutes later carrying 2 coffees. One already cold. He handed it to her. She accepted without comment. The old habit made him smile despite everything. Ava always forgot her coffee. Some things never changed. Others changed too much. They spread documents across a long wooden table. Victor's photograph, the list of names, the dates, the flash drive records, the graduation photograph, the anonymous messages. Months of investigation compressed into scattered fragments. For nearly an hour neither spoke much. They simply worked, sorting, comparing, questioning, searching for patterns hidden beneath noise. Then Owen suddenly froze. What? He pointed toward Victor's list. These dates. Ava leaned closer. Several names appeared beside corresponding years. Nothing unusual at first glance, until Owen overlaid another document. Internal investigation failures. Witness disappearances, evidence leaks, operation cancellations. The dates matched. Not approximately, exactly. The room fell silent. Ava examined the papers again, then again. Her pulse slowed, focus sharpening. Every major compromise aligned with one of the names Victor had provided. Every single one. Not coincidence. Coordination. The pattern was finally visible, and once visible, impossible to ignore. Owen looked up. Oh my God, Ava said nothing, because she had reached a different conclusion. Something worse. Far worse. These weren't participants. They were casualties. The realization arrived suddenly, violently, like a puzzle flipping upside down. Everyone assumed the listed individuals belonged to the network. But what if they didn't? What if every person on Victor's list had attempted to expose something? What if the dates marked elimination instead of recruitment? Ava grabbed another folder, rapidly flipping pages. Witness reports, transfers, retirements, resignations, career derailments, public scandals. Every name suffered professional destruction shortly after appearing in the timeline. Everyone. Her heartbeat quickened. Not from fear, from understanding. Finally, someone wasn't building an organization. Someone was protecting one by removing threats. Patiently, for years, Owen stared at her expression. She slid the documents toward him. His eyes widened, then widened further. Oh no. Exactly. Oh no, because the implications changed everything. The network wasn't expanding, it was surviving, like a living organism protecting itself, adapting, removing threats before they became dangerous. Ava leaned back, thinking, always thinking. Then another realization surfaced. The unknown man in Victor's photograph. The face nobody recognized. The face Victor claimed everybody should know. What if the answer wasn't criminal? What if it was institutional? The archive building suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too exposed. Ava stood. We need identification. Owen nodded immediately. I know someone, can we trust them? The question lingered, uncomfortable, necessary. Finally Owen answered honestly. I don't know. That honesty was becoming increasingly valuable. They left separately. Different vehicles, different routes, different destinations. Paranoia had become procedure. The contact lived outside Savannah, retired. Former intelligence analyst. 72 years old, brilliant reputation. No current government affiliation. If anyone could identify a face from a decade-old photograph, it would be him. The meeting occurred after midnight. A modest home. Bookshelves. Family photographs. A sleeping golden retriever near the fireplace. Nothing about the house suggested secrets, which made what happened next even more disturbing. The old analyst studied the photograph for less than 5 seconds, then immediately looked away. Not confusion. Recognitions. Instant recognition. So did Owen. The man removed his glasses, placed them carefully on the table, suddenly looking much older, much more tired. Where did you get this? Ava answered carefully. Why? The old analyst remained silent, then finally spoke. I haven't seen that face in 15 years. Neither Ava nor Owen interrupted. Some stories required room. The public doesn't know his name. A pause. He never wanted them to. Another pause. Longer this time. The old man looked toward the window, as if remembering something unpleasant. Finally he continued. He wasn't a criminal. Ava felt her pulse quicken. He wasn't law enforcement either. Then who? The analyst answered before she asked. He was the man who designed the system. Silence, complete silence. Even the dog seemed awake now, watching, listening. The old analyst leaned forward, his voice lowering. Information sharing, joint task force integration, interagency intelligence coordination. He helped create the architecture modern investigations still used today. Ava stared. The words sounded harmless, administrative, technical, boring even. Until the implications arrived. A system architect, someone positioned above investigations, above departments, above jurisdictions, a man capable of seeing everything. The analyst continued. He knew where evidence traveled. He knew who accessed files. He knew how information moved. Another pause. And he understood something dangerous. Ava's voice remained calm. What? The old man's answer came softly. Control the flow of information. He looked directly at her. And eventually you control reality. Nobody spoke, because nobody needed to. The meaning was obvious, painfully obvious. A corrupt detective could sabotage a case. A corrupt supervisor could damage a department. But someone controlling information itself? That person could manipulate entire systems, entire narratives, entire careers, entire investigations for years, perhaps decades. Ava suddenly understood Victor Hale, the warning, the fear, the exhaustion. He hadn't been protecting criminal operations. He had been surviving inside a machine far larger than himself. The old analyst rose slowly, his hands shaking slightly. Age, or memory, perhaps both. Before leaving the room he stopped beside Ava. One final piece of advice, delivered almost as a whisper. If Daniel Cross is involved, a pause. He isn't the architect. Ava felt cold, very cold. The analyst looked toward the photograph again, then spoke the sentence neither Ava nor Owen expected. Daniel Cross was recruited. Not leader, not creator, recruited. The distinction changed everything, again. The old man disappeared down the hallway. Leaving them alone, neither spoke for nearly a minute. Then Owen finally broke the silence. If Cross isn't running it, he couldn't finish. He didn't need to. Ava already understood. Because the question terrified her too. If Daniel Cross wasn't the top, if Victor Hale wasn't the top, if the visible players weren't the architects, then somebody else remained hidden. Somebody still watching, still moving pieces, still controlling information, and perhaps most frightening of all, someone who already knew Ava Monroe was getting closer. Her phone vibrated. One new message, unknown sender. Only an address, no explanation, no signature, no instructions, just coordinates. Ava stared at it, then felt her stomach drop. Because she recognized the location immediately. The address belonged to the federal training facility where Daniel Cross had appeared in the graduation photograph. And according to public records, the facility had been abandoned 12 years ago. At the bottom of the message sat 4 final words. Come alone if possible. And for the first time since this began, Ava realized she was no longer chasing the truth. The truth was leading her. The abandoned federal training facility sat nearly 3 hours north of Savannah. The highway narrowed gradually as Ava Monroe drove through pine forests and forgotten towns. Gas stations became rarer. Streetlights disappeared. Cell reception weakened until even the navigation map struggled to update. Whoever sent the coordinates had chosen the location carefully. Isolation created silence, silence created vulnerability, and vulnerability revealed truth. Perhaps. Sometimes both. The facility finally appeared just after dawn. A cluster of aging buildings hidden behind rusting security fences. Cracked asphalt, boarded windows, faded government signage barely visible beneath layers of weather damage. Nature had slowly reclaimed the property. Vines climbed concrete walls. Weeds pushed through parking lots. Trees stood where vehicles once parked. Nothing about the place suggested importance, which made it perfect. Ava parked 200 yards away. The morning air carried the smell of wet earth and pine needles. Somewhere beyond the tree line a bird called once, and then fell silent. She stepped from the vehicle and looked toward the largest building, Administration Center. According to public records, it had closed 12 years earlier. According to the anonymous message, somebody wanted her there now. Her phone showed no signal expected. She entered anyway. Dust covered the lobby floor. Old bulletin boards hung crookedly on walls. A faded recruitment poster remained pinned beside a reception desk. Serve with integrity. The irony wasn't lost on her. Footsteps echoed softly as she moved deeper inside. Every sound felt amplified. Every shadow seemed slightly wrong. The place carried the strange atmosphere common to abandoned institutions. As if memories remained long after people left. Ava followed the hallway toward the administrative archives. The same location visible in the graduation photograph. The same place where Daniel Cross once stood smiling beside future investigators. The same place where an unknown architect had apparently influenced generations of careers. Then she saw it. A single light. Visible beneath a partially open door. Someone was here, waiting. Ava approached carefully, one hand near her concealed weapon, heart steady, breathing controlled. She reached the doorway, pushed it open, and stopped. Daniel Cross sat alone at a conference table. A single lamp illuminated the room. Nothing else, no agents, no weapons visible, no security teams, no dramatic confrontation. Just an aging federal investigator sitting beside a cardboard archive box. Waiting, Cross looked tired, far more tired than she had ever seen him. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally Ava broke the silence. You chose an interesting meeting place. Cross nodded. It seemed appropriate. Why? His eyes drifted toward the walls. Toward the old facility around them. Because this is where it started. The answer felt honest. That frightened her more than deception would have. Ava entered slowly. The room smelled like paper and dust. Cross gestured toward an empty chair. She remained standing. He seemed unsurprised. You came alone, you asked me to. A faint smile touched his face. No. A pause. I didn't. The words landed heavily. Ava's pulse remained calm. But her attention sharpened instantly. Then who did? Cross looked down at the archive box beside him. That's the question, isn't it? Silence settled between them. Neither rushed it. Eventually, Cross opened the box. Inside sat folders, old folders, paper records, original records. The kind that existed before databases, before clouds, before information became easy to manipulate. He removed one file and slid it across the table. Ava opened it, then froze. Not because of what she found, because of when she found it. The documents were over 20 years old, predating Victor Hale, predating her career, predating nearly everything connected to the investigation. Internal memoranda, system architecture proposals, information sharing initiatives, interagency coordination plans, technical reports, all bearing the same signature. The man from Victor's photograph, the unknown face. A name finally appeared, Arthur Voss. Ava read it twice. Cross watched quietly, then spoke. Brilliant man. Another pause. Possibly the smartest person I ever met. The room felt colder, not physically, emotionally. Cross continued. He understood something before everyone else. What? He understood that information would become more valuable than evidence. Ava remained silent. Cross looked toward the old files. When agencies started sharing intelligence, everyone celebrated. His voice carried neither pride nor bitterness, only exhaustion. They thought information would make investigations stronger. It did. Then what happened? Cross laughed softly. The sound held no amusement. Human nature happened. He leaned back. Arthur designed systems connecting everything. Cases, witnesses, evidence, financial records, personnel files. He could see relationships nobody else could. Another pause. Longer this time. Eventually he realized something. Ava already suspected the answer. Cross confirmed it. The person controlling information doesn't need power. He becomes power. The truth finally began taking shape, not dramatic, not explosive, worse, believable. Ava slowly sat down, for the first time, because now she needed answers more than caution. Arthur built the network. Cross nodded. Yes, you worked for him. Another nod. Yes, the honesty felt shocking, almost disorienting. No excuses, no denials, no manipulation, just truth, or something close to it. Why? Cross looked away, toward a dusty window, overlooking abandoned training grounds. When I was young. He stopped. Started again. When I was young I believed good people always won. His smile returned briefly, sad, self-aware. Then I started investigating reality. Silence. Cross folded his hands. Arthur never recruited criminals, he recruited idealists. The statement landed harder than expected. Because it made sense. Idealists justified compromises. Idealists believed they served larger purposes. Idealists convinced themselves temporary corruption protected permanent stability. Cross continued. We started small. Protecting investigations, protecting witnesses, protecting sources. Then his voice grew quieter, and eventually we started protecting ourselves. There it was, the transformation. Not sudden evil, gradual erosion. The way most institutions actually failed. Ava stared at him. How many people? Cross hesitated. Not because he didn't know, because he did. More than I can count. The answer felt genuine. Disturbingly genuine. The room fell silent again. Finally Ava asked questions haunting her for years. The little boy. Cross closed his eyes only briefly. But long enough. The case from 7 years ago. No response. Only silence. Ava's chest opened, his eyes again. I tried to stop it. The words barely emerged above a whisper. I failed. Nothing dramatic followed. No speeches. No emotional confession. Only a tired old man confronting consequences. Sometimes truth arrived quietly. This was one of those times. Ava looked down at the photograph she carried everywhere. The folded image. The worn edges. Years of questions. Years of anger. Years of pursuit. Cross spoke again. Victor Hale wasn't protecting himself. Ava looked up. He was protecting witnesses. The world shifted. Again Victor. The suspected kingpin. The feared smuggler. The untouchable businessman. Protecting witnesses. Cross nodded, as if reading her disbelief. Arthur wanted several people removed. Victor hid them. Another pause. He became useful. Then, he became dangerous because he knew too much. The logic was terrifyingly simple. Ava finally understood the warnings, the fear, the exhaustion. Victor Hale hadn't survived because he controlled the network. He survived because eliminating him would expose it. For a while, only for a while. The sound of approaching vehicles interrupted everything. Distant, outside, several engines. Cross heard them too. Neither seemed surprised. Ava stood immediately. Cross remained seated, calm. Thus that they found us. Who? Cross almost smiled. The people still protecting Arthur's legacy. Ava moved toward the window. Multiple SUVs entering the property. Fast, purposeful, not law enforcement markings. Private, organized, professional. Cross stood slowly. Years seemed visible in every movement, every regret, every compromise, every burden. Then he handed her a small flash drive, another one. Different from the first, the originals. Ava accepted it. What is it? The truth. No dramatic pause, no mystery, just certainty. The actual records, witness lists, Transfers, payments, communications, everything. The engines outside grew louder, closer. Cross looked toward the door, then back at Ava. You need to leave. She didn't move, neither did he. Finally Ava asked, what about you? For the first time all morning Daniel Cross smiled genuinely. Not proudly, not happily, humanly. Tired people don't always run. The answer told her everything. Outside doors slammed, voices echoed, movement, urgency, the situation shrinking rapidly. Cross stepped aside, creating a path toward a rear exit. Ava hesitated only briefly, then took it, because some truths mattered more than final conversations. The last time she saw Daniel Cross he stood alone inside the abandoned archive room surrounded by decades of secrets. Not as a villain, not as a hero, as something far more human. A man who had spent too long convincing himself he could control consequences. 8 months later, congressional hearings filled national headlines. Investigations expanded across multiple agencies. Resignations followed. Indictments followed those. Then reforms. Then more investigations. The network never proved as large as people imagined, nor as small as officials hoped. Reality rarely satisfied either side. Arthur Voss died years earlier. Hidden, protected, forgotten. His empire of information survived longer than he did. But not forever. Nothing survives forever. Not systems, not secrets, not lies. Eventually somebody keeps asking questions. Victor Hale never returned to public life. Most people assumed he retired. The truth remained more complicated. It usually did. And Ava Monroe? One autumn afternoon she sat beside the river outside a small coastal town. No luxury cars. No undercover identities. No investigations. Just a wooden bench, a paper cup of coffee already growing cold, and a folded photograph resting in her hands. The little boy smiled from the faded image exactly as he always had. The answers hadn't changed the loss. Nothing could. But answers mattered anyway. A child ran past chasing a paper airplane carried by the wind. For a moment Ava watched it rise, dip, then climb again over the water. She smiled, small, private, real. The river continued toward the ocean, the same way it always had. Quietly, without needing anyone's permission. And for the first time in many years, Ava Monroe stopped looking over her shoulder.